What is up, folks at home? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to head underwater and we are going to talk about throwing the old ball and chain. You guessed it, the Carolina rig. We're going to talk about the top baits we throw it, where we throw it, and how we're going to use that bait to catch some fish. So we'll see you underwater. Let's check it out. Alright everybody, when we are fishing the Carolina rig, we are throwing a big weight, a ½ ounce to an ounce, with a bead and a swivel on the back of it with a leader. First thing that we want to throw is a monofilament leader on there. It's going to help the bait float up. Now, looking at the map, where are we going to throw Carolina rigs up north? So here is Lake Maxinkuckee. As you can see, there are monstrous flats in 10 to 15 feet of water. This is where smallmouth and largemouth are going to spend the majority of their summertime. Now, this is a huge area to cover, and it's often filled, if you look at vegetation, it's often filled with lines of vegetation. One of the best ways to fish a bait consistently through this vegetation is with a Carolina rig. The Carolina rig is going to drag through those sand spots and create a ruckus with those beads and rattles cranking, and then that lure comes in floating behind it and absolutely gets nailed. Now, what I want to focus on in the summer are fishing these lines of vegetation along these big flats in an effective way. With a ½ ounce to an ounce weight, I can make a long cast parallel to that vegetation line and drag that bait all the way through it, right? That is a fantastic way to contact fish. Now, we can also look at bottom hardness and see that on these flats, there are hard spots. You want crunchy spots when you're fishing a Carolina rig, places where there's shell beds, where there's rock, where there's different things. Looking at Maxinkuckee, you've got veins of hard spots all throughout the lake, which are easily contacted by that Carolina rig weight. So that's where I fish a Carolina rig. It's an effective way to cover water with baits and weights that will get a long cast out there and make that possible. So while we're covering these flats, I tend to think of baits in three categories. The first step is the creature bait, and this is my favorite creature bait of all time, the Berkley Havoc Pit Boss. It is a killer, and I like to slow wind this bait through there. I like to do big hops, let the weight fall up and down, and then let that bait slowly fall through the column. I think it does great. A lot of times with Carolina rigs, people just straight drag. I like to hop the Carolina rig. You can drag it. Here it is dragging. It looks really good, but if the fish aren't as active, that hopping tends to work better. This bait is super subtle and active. It has a nice fall on it. This is one of my favorite soft plastic shapes of all time. It has yet to let me down in all of my years of fishing. Really recommend throwing that. Also, one of my other favorite classic baits to throw on this is the Berkley Chigger Craw. And this is the Crazy Legs Chigger Craw. It has those extra appendages on there. And as you can see, it has a slow fall. It looks just like a bluegill. It looks really good coming through. If fish are eating bluegill or crawfish, you want to throw the Pit Boss or the Chigger Craw. They are hands down my favorite lures to throw on a Carolina rig, but I don't drag it as much as I hop it. With this, big hops, let the weight fall, make a lot of noise in those shell beds and rocks, and then I'm using about a 2.5 to 3 foot leader. It's a long leader on these baits because I want a lot of separation between weight and bait, so that goes high up in. If you straight drag it, here's what it looks like again. It looks great, but I'd like to hop it between these grass patches and really pop it off of there and make it a subtle presentation that covers a lot of water quickly. Third one in this category is the tube. Let me tell you, the tube looks fantastic. An unweighted tube on the back of a Carolina rig looks really good and tends to really shine in smallmouth water or when the fish are really active. The tube has a nice darting action. You can see in the background here, this is the exact cover that I want to throw a Carolina rig in. Shells on the bottom, scattered vegetation. The tube excels in this situation. It slides through cover. Anywhere that there's perch, I'm throwing a tube because this slides through cover just like a perch does, and it really excels on the Carolina rig. Now, if the fish are far more active, I am going to throw an active bait. Here you have the 7.5 inch culprit worm in green pumpkin chartreuse. This is the best ribbon-tailed worm on the market, bar none. I learned to fish ribbon-tailed worms with this. This tends to be a far more dragging presentation. I'm straight up dragging that Carolina rig with big drags and reels, big drags and reels. And as that weight gets down there, it kind of shimmies through the cover along with that worm shimmying through the cover. I love a ribbon-tailed worm. A lot of guys don't don't fish them anymore. That's a travesty because they catch fish and they are a very effective bait at covering water. I did a whole series on ribbon-tailed worms. Feel free to go check that out. But once again, it's dictated by the cover. You can see we're on this big sand flat right here. This is the type of cover that you want to fish a Carolina rig in. This is where it excels, right? A swim bait tends to be high. The Carolina rig can be low in the water. Here's a 6.5-inch robo worm flatworm, and this bait excels on big hops. Not so much a dragging bait with the Carolina rig, but big hops. It's a very smooth fall and a smooth bait, but it has that twitch action on it that I really like and that can trigger fish. That secondary twitch action that moves the water in the water column looks great, but it's a subtle bait. This is a new bait for me. I haven't got to fish it a lot on a Carolina rig, but it looks fantastic underwater. I can't wait to put some time in on this bait because I feel like it's going to get a better than average bite because it's kind of a bigger profile bait that you normally don't show a smallmouth, don't show a largemouth that's up on a sand flat like this. And this bottom composition, once again, is perfect for Carolina rigs because it's going to get that crunch from the shells and it's going to slide through all of this cover perfectly. Now, here's one of my favorites, the Zoom Finesse Worm. This is the 6-inch version, and I love this bait on almost every application that I throw it. It's fantastic on a Carolina rig. It's got that neutral buoyancy on it. Fish will eat a Zoom Finesse Worm like you would not believe. All the colors are great. It's a proven fish catcher for me. You see it's got that nice little shimmy and rock on the big hop. It's not so much a dragging bait, it's a big hop bait, but it's just one of those things that you can't do wrong. You can't fish a Zoom worm wrong, right? It's one of those baits where if you're not sure about throwing a Carolina rig, put that Zoom worm on the back of it, drag it around, hop it around, you're going to get bit, right? It's also really hard to know what baits to throw if you haven't done something yet. Here we have the Rattleworm 4.5, and this is kind of the last of those sections of baits. It's a small bait, it's a do-nothing bait, but it looks just like a minnow or just like a perch darting around on the bottom. So you had those worms, you had those creature baits, and then you have do-nothing baits. This rattleworm looks fantastic. It's this or a fluke in this situation. It looks like a small perch or minnow darting through all this cover, and that's what I specifically want it to do. I want it to do nothing. I want it to follow that weight through the cover just like that and look like a darting perch or a minnow. That is the point of a Carolina rig. You detach the noise section from the actual bait, so they hear the noise, they can track it, but they don't track the bait with noise. Carolina rig can help you cover windswept flats up in the north and the south. It can help you cover shell bars. Anywhere there's some crunch in the ground that you're fishing, a Carolina rig is going to call those fish in. It's a great way to catch them. If you guys like what's happening on the channel, give us a like, subscribe, go to Omnia, buy our stuff from the links, help support the channel. If you want to see stuff underwater, go to our comment section, leave us a comment. But hey, thanks for hanging with us. We appreciate all of you guys. Give us a like, subscribe. We'll see you out there next time.